Welcome to the House of Labor. This is Studio 371, the podcast, here on Mighty Union Digital Originals, your source for information and insight about our union. Now here's your host, SSCU Local 371 President, Anthony Wells.
And good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to SSEU Local 371's podcast, Studio 371. First of all, we want to say a moment of silence in recognition of the horrible inhumanity to man that occurred in Buffalo. Thank you. Words cannot truly capture the pain, the heartache, the terror, the anger, the so many levels of emotions that people have, and we will not forget what happened in California either. And obviously in the house of worship, where people want to go and feel safe, we will have another moment of silence for what happened in California. Thank you all. So welcome to our 9th episode of Studio 371. What have we been dealing with for 2.5 years? COVID pandemic, which has changed all of our lives, changed the way business is done, the way we live. It's a ever-evolving situation, but we went through the crisis. Our workers, all of them provided important services, whether they were labeled essential or just went about doing the daily work that city workers do. Many of our members worked in locations during the pandemic. Some people had hybrid schedules, and then others were working remotely. All of it impacted by the devastation and scourge called COVID-19 and its prodigies. Because once the first one came, it had offshoots and continues to have offshoots. But today we want to talk about surviving, the impact of COVID-19. What did we go through? And we have several members who worked in different agencies and in different capacities. So we're going to have them introduce themselves. And we're going to start off with Norma.
Hello, my name is Norma Vidal. I work at the shelter on 39 Auburn Place in Brooklyn, and my title is a community associate.
Thank you. Leilani.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Leilani Irvin. I'm the Manhattan Borough Director for the Department of Social Services.
Thank you. Anthony.
Good afternoon. My name is Anthony Ruggieri. I'm a supervisor with HRA at 151 West Broadway.
Mushy.
Hi, I'm administrative contracts manager. I work for HRA in the Fair Fares program.
So we're going to really have a conversation. You can mute yourselves. Thank you. And we're going to have a couple of guests join us as we progress with what's happening. So as I started off, I talked about the pandemic that we are still in, and there's various levels of crises. But I want to hear from you guys how we did this. Norma, your first reaction when you realized that this was a serious situation?
Well, I've been working for the Department of Homeless Services for over 33 years, and I've experienced a lot of things, but never nothing like this pandemic that came here. I mean, we had all kind of things going on. We continued working because this is a 24-hour operation. So for us, it was no way out. But we stuck through it. We stood there. We covered each other. People got sick. People were out with the COVID. Some people were very ill. We all covered each other. It was an experience of a lifetime. I would never forget this. But everyone stood up. Everybody, front line, and focus and dedication got us through it all.
So
And
you,
we're still fighting it.
so you worked during the pandemic. You were on a full
Every day,
schedule.
I worked a compressed schedule, and I also made myself available for the days that I had off because we were so short staffed with the people that were sick.
And the clientele that you serve is a family shelter that you work?
It's adult family services. So it was a lot of street people came in because we had a lot of people out in the street. So they were bringing everybody in, but it's families of 18 and over.
Thank you. Anthony, let's take the same question with you. When did you realize how serious this was, and tell us what kind of worker were you? Were you remote, hybrid?
So for me, President Wells, it really hit home the day we were discharged from the office. I believe that day was March 19, 2020. It was a Thursday. And we were at work. We were preparing for this possibility by working on the remote access at work. And then there was some confusion as to when it would go into effect. Then we heard some information in the morning that we were going to be released. And then that didn't pan out, and we were working. And as we were working, we got information that other officers were asked to go home and not work from the office because of the severity of what the government and the city may have known about the coronavirus. But we didn't know and didn't get released till about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on that day. So everybody kind of scrambled. We didn't have any masks. Our supervisors kind of said, just cover up, try to make it home, don't get near anyone, try to keep your distance. But it's New York City. We have the subways are packed. And so a couple of the staff members here were like, we were all confused, myself included. So we were trying to figure out, like, how would we do it? We didn't know what it was about. So some of us decided that we'd avoid the train and walk over the Brooklyn Bridge because many of us lived in the outer borough of Brooklyn. And so we walked, but we kept our distance and we had our face covered. And when we got to Brooklyn, we started noticing other, I guess, city workers or just workers scrambling just as well to try to get home. And then the next day there was confusion, really no direction. We were just asked to continue to train for the possibility of working on applications, that was something they were going to put in place. So many of us started to train from home with our own computers in the following day and weeks after that. There was confusion as to how to
Well,
document your time
don't
in the
go that far
beginning.
yet.
Okay.
Don't go that far yet.
Okay.
We're gonna
Okay.
get to how it progressed. I want to get your initial reactions and call for you to express it. Mushy,
Just fear. I mean, everyone
yeah,
in the office, we had fear. Nobody knew
got you,
anything about this. We didn't want to get ourselves killed or even take something home to kill our family members.
I got you.
So it was just really, chaotic.
Okay. Thanks, Aunt. Mushy, I had you. I lost you again.
Sorry.
Leilani, and I wanted you to add because you were one of the. Well, you've been around for a while. How many years you been around now?
5 years.
5 years. Okay, so this definitely is your first crisis with the city of New York.
Oh yeah.
Talk about it.
So as the Manhattan Borough Director for the Department of Social Services, we, as you know, we do the government affairs on behalf of the agency. You can think of us as like the public relations in the sense of the agency. And so we also work with all the shelter providers. I work with all of them in Manhattan. So immediately, for me personally, when the pandemic first was defined as a pandemic, I personally, as someone who's a chronic asthmatic, was worried, because I have an immunocompromised system, and so I, heard about some units in some other folks that I work with, my colleagues in other agencies, were able to work remotely. And so, I just started using my personal time until the city figured out what they were going to do with everyone, if we were going to be able to work remotely or not. I know that there was protocols that several, folks had to figure out policy, what cannot happen. And so I didn't wait. I took my time that I had, I used my time, and was off until folks kind of figured out what we can do. But in the interim, in the meantime, the immediate feeling was concern, fear of also what's going to happen to the population we serve in shelter who lived in congregate settings. I couldn't really figure out mentally how the agency and the city was going to operationalize isolating people, or what would even happen. So, although I'm grateful to have a home to go to where I can isolate, I know that the people I work on behalf of do not have that luxury. And so the concern about what's going to happen to them was also something that was on my mind. But I want to say the immediate reaction was fear, concern, and also just really relying on the leadership to make a reasonable, sound executive decision on behalf of the city workers, in which I feel they did.
Okay, thank you. Mushy, and tell me, you also, are you new to city government, or are you new to your position?
No, so when the pandemic hit, I was at a previous agency, and I've been there for the last 15 years. And during the pandemic, I transferred over to HRA.
Okay. So,
So I was working, but to answer your question, I was working fully remote at my other agency.
but let's talk about, but you still had to have an initial reaction to, and what agency was that? What previous agency was it? City agency?
I was working for the New York City Department of Small Business Services.
Okay, SP, okay. So you had to have a reaction, though now, and here's interesting. Your clientele is different than most of the other agencies, because you're dealing with people in small businesses, helping to promote
Correct.
small businesses, but you still had to have a reaction so at what point did you realize how serious this was, and
So
how did it impact you?
when the pandemic started, like Mr. Anthony said, that Tuesday I was out on leave on a doctor's appointment, and when I got the email stating that don't come back to work, that for the rest of the week, I thought, all right, cool, like I got a vacation, but then I got a subsequent email telling me that, like, myself, and I guess whoever colleagues that was sitting in my area, somebody had caught COVID. So I had to go back to the doctor to get retested, and then I actually had COVID. So I had the first wave of COVID. So that's when I knew how serious it was.
So as tight as you can say it, tell me about what you consider your survival of COVID thus far. And I'm going to say thus far because it ain't over, right? So
Right.
let's talk about, and I'll start with you since I got you right here. To talk about what does that mean, your survival of COVID?
Well, I mean, when I first initially got it, thankfully all I had was body chills. I didn't really have like the respiratory issues that other people have been having. So I just, quarantined at home in my apartment, unfortunately, with my wife and kid. That was pretty tough because it was what was it? It was 3 to 4 months together in our small 2-bedroom apartment before we could actually like leave the house per se. But dealing with COVID was actually like most people are saying during this times, it was a gift and a curse, right? The curse was that, like, you had to be situated in your small space, but then the gift was that you had that time with your family.
Okay. Lalani, I see you agreeing. So let's talk about what does that mean to you? What does it mean? What was it?
Yeah, it was very real for me. I lost, close people during the pandemic to COVID. I agree with Masucci. Sorry if I messed your name up, but I connected with what he was saying. It did allow me some time to bond with family. In my current work capacity before COVID, I was all over the borough, Working late hours, sometimes in shelter running cab meetings. I mean, putting in a lot of hours, and the work tripled actually during the pandemic. I thought it would slow down. Wrong. Complete opposite. But although the work tripled, I still was home and I had the opportunity to be closer with family more than I ever have while working. And it kind of magnified some things that I never really looked at as a young professional. One, work-life balance. You need to make sure that you have a balance, making sure that you are taking care of you, making sure that, you're setting boundaries and schedules, and preserving self. And so that's something that I looked at objectively when the pandemic hit. Something that I was not thinking about, not looking at before the pandemic. And so this allowed me. It was a gift and a curse. Was able to save money. Was able to eat healthier.
Okay.
Being mindful of whatever I was eating. But for the most part, the most important thing to me was bonding with family and spending more time with my loved ones.
Okay, appreciate that. Norma, wow. And you had the additional challenge of working every day and going
Right.
on, so you had two different levels to deal. Talk to us about surviving and what did
Right.
that mean?
Unfortunately, I was privileged enough to not even get COVID. Um, by the grace of God, it never came my way. I've seen a lot of people here in my job while working get the COVID. Unfortunately, I live by myself. So it was a little rough, a little depressing because I had no one to go home to. I was alone, no one to talk to. My family's far away. And but I survived it. I went with my fellow coworkers. I would talk to them, and I did put in a lot of time working because at that time they needed workers. It was rough in the shelter. We were a 24-hour operation, so people were coming in and out every day, all day. A lot of staff members were getting COVID. Families were dying. And it was rough, but we stuck it out. And I just hope and pray that this next wave is not as bad because I don't know. It's really something hard to deal with. If when you're sitting at home by yourself, with no one there to comfort you, it's kind of hard. But thank God I made it through it, and I kept myself busy coming into the shelter. Right along with the clients in a survival mode.
That's good.
Uh-huh.
So, Anthony, I like to use moments as what we call teaching moments, education moments. So let's talk about what was done by the city, by the union. Tell me about what that meant and what things maybe we could have did different
So,
or better.
um, sure, sure. So, um, let me start by saying, on a city level, I feel like uh, certain decisions were not made in preparation of what they may have known. The city tends to be reactory in a lot of their decision making rather than proactive. Um, with that being said, the opposite I found with our union and other unions during the pandemic, they seem to have been more proactive, but in trying to get our members, myself and members in HRA, all kinds of accommodations, sort of like laptops and things like that, so that individuals who didn't have a laptop could actually get in there and help city um, members of the city get services and benefits. I know directly that your office was directly responsible for um, getting members internet access so that they could serve, the people of the city of New York, because there were members who just got rushed out and got home and had the computers but didn't have quite the internet speed in order to get the kind of work that we eventually did from home, um, without that, those kind of like internet blocks that was negotiated through your office and the city of New York. So kudos for that.
Thank you. So, Leilani, what? Give me an assessment. Give me a judgment. Give me an idea of the city's response, the union's response. Where did all that lie? And if anything, what can we learn to do better?
Well, I'm gonna start with the positives, and then I'm gonna go into like things I think could have improved. One thing that impressed me was the agency, in terms of how we moved moving folks out of my part of the work during the pandemic was to assist with the moves for our shelter residents out of congregate settings and into commercial hotels, which then meant that we put folks into communities that traditionally did not have a shelter, did not want a shelter. I was the one having the conversation, the one notifying electeds and communities that we're moving in here. It's temporary. And, a lot of people, a lot of it was NIMBY. Some folks didn't want to see, our residents in their community. And so one thing that I was really, really impressed with was the way the agency quickly moved people into density reduction hotels, because that was my primary concern with folks being in congregate shelter settings. And so just to watch the way folks internally in the agency operationalize that, it was like moving a city within a city. For me, I'm new to the city workforce in a sense. I want to say I've been working for the city 10 years, but working for DHS for 5. So it was impressive to see how folks operationalize that and execute it. Of course, there's hiccups. Of course, there's things that could have been improved and done better. But for me, in terms of what I think the city could have done, Mr. Anthony's point better was, didn't seem like, I feel like we are oftentimes very much so reactionary instead of being proactive. And so a lot of the information, was janky. Some supervisors didn't know really what they could and could not do. The way we were being advised, I feel like staff was advising senior leadership on what our rights were. Thankfully, by working with labor and having folks in labor from 371 advising and guiding us on what our rights are and what we can and cannot advocate for and what we can and cannot do. So it was a lot of that kind of managing up from my experience and trying to, explain and advocate on behalf of my unit on, how we can protect ourselves, because it was kind of, we were in the gray area in the dark. So I think as a lesson learned, also in the beginning, the previous administration was, there was different direction on wear a mask or don't wear a mask, those types of guidances. It was all over the place. And obviously, this was new. So, there's a lot of lessons to be learned from it. But what the one thing I think needs to, if I could make a recommendation, if there could, be better, succinct communication coming from, the administration down to city agencies. And I think 371 and labor did a phenomenal job, a great job with being present with the employees in the agency and help guide us through, what we were entitled to and what our rights were, and help fighting for us.
Thank you. Norma, being in the trenches every day.
Yeah.
What did we learn? What could we do better? What was done
Yeah.
good?
Well, the communication was the thing that we could have did better. It was poor communication. We weren't getting the right information. And because we are a 24-hour operation, it made it a little harder. And just like Lalani was saying, they say you can't wear a mask, you could wear a mask, but they weren't providing masks. Thank God for 371. I reached out and they got me masks. They brought me masks over here. I started giving out masks to the members, and everybody started feeling a little bit better because we were very short on masks, and then we had a lot of clients that we had to provide masks for. And that was the most that I felt that the city could have did better, was communicate with us and also, provide us with the things that we needed, the sanitizer, the alcohol, the mask. That was really hard for us at the beginning, But thank God now we have plenty of it. So,
And
but the
unfortunately,
union came through for us.
and it looks like, and we'll appreciate that because in our union, the union is all of us, all of you on the screen.
Right.
It's not me, it's not the officers, it's not 1501. It's all 20,000, whatever number we have that makes us up. And we appreciate you and thank you for that. So we're going to take our break right now. Thank you all for your honest, upfront, and outright conversation about what this means. We're going to take a break. We're going to do our labor history. And this one is especially special to me. We'll be back.
Lillian Davis Roberts is a soft-spoken, kind, and giving person, except when she's negotiating for workers. And then she's tough. Lillian, affectionately referred to as Miss Lil, is the grand dame of the labor movement for progressive causes making our city and country better. She used to say her religion is the labor movement. Lillian served on the executive board of ASME and was the first African-American woman to lead District Council 37, the largest municipal union in New York City. She's a fighter and got things done. Robert started out as a nurse's aide and was the secretary of the University of Chicago Hospital Local when she was invited by Victor Gottbaum to join his ASME union staff in Chicago of 1959. When Gottbaum became head of DC 37, Roberts joined them in New York as the director of hospital field operations and eventually became associate director in charge of organizing. In 1969, she was jailed for 2 weeks for defying New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller and leading a strike against 3 mental hospitals. In 1981, she left the union and was appointed as New York State Industrial Commissioner, the first African-American woman to hold such a high post in New York. From 1987 to 1992, she was Senior Vice President of Total Health Systems and HMO. There were tumultuous times at DC 37 in the late 1990s, and Roberts returned to DC 37 as executive director in 2002. As noted in Roberts' words, a return to that old-time religion. She has empowered so many generations of leadership directly and indirectly through her life and career. Lillian Roberts retired at the end of 2014. We thank her for her leadership, accomplishments, and remarkable work. We salute Lillian Roberts, and thank you, Miss Lil. Thanks for listening to Studio 371 with President Anthony Wells. If you like our show and want to know more, check out our website, www.mightyunion.org. Or please leave us a review on iTunes. Until next time, Union strong, Union proud.